Good morning, everyone. Good morning. That was beautiful. So, this morning is a topic in our theme for our 12 months of permaculture. And I have to thank Reverend Elijah because, I have all these great ideas for a sermon, and then he throws me a curveball, and I'm like, what? And then I have to do the research and more homework. And it's really revealing and uncovering some magical things. So, right now, one of the things I want to talk about is how important this idea of permaculture is and try to relate it to our everyday lives. There's a gentleman, a mystic guru called Sadhguru, and he's on YouTube a lot, and he's going around the world on his motorcycle, and he takes it on a ship across the Atlantic, back and forth, and he's talking about in 13 years, it is predicted by scientists that our soil will be so depleted, the microbes in the soil, that our ability to produce food will go down to 0.25% of what it is today. And as time goes on, they're projecting 9 billion people with only a quarter of the food production that we have today. And what's really interesting about that is we can turn that around right now. And I have to tell you, I stopped watching the news after COVID, and after watching it for 4 intense years prior to that. And I started watching comedians, Trevor Noah, and now I get my news through comedy and through real points of news. And that seems to kind of soften it for me and kind of put it into perspective. So this morning, right now, I'm going to talk about the challenges and obstacles we have in front of us, and then hopefully I'll add some humor so we can laugh together and heal together. So the way we do soil, and we talked about this before, is that we do row crops and we turn over the soil over and over again, and it doesn't even last a season. And what happens is the microbes just die because there is no organic waste. And this morning we're talking about waste and that there is no away. And we recognize that in the bleakness of how we deal with our trash, right? How we deal with our garbage. We love it because we put it in a container and it's taken somewhere where we don't get to see it, right? But it doesn't go anywhere. It goes into our ocean. It goes into another country, which I'll get back to later. And just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's not like multiplying and we're not figuring out ways to get rid of our waste. So, anyways, I want to tell you that 3 years ago, I did one of my first sermons up here, and I had some special guests. It was the first time and probably the last time I used props, and I had special guests. Well, I asked them to come back, and they were unavailable, so I brought props to remind us of them. So, one of the magical things about soil is that when it has diversity, lots of different other plants around whatever we're growing, it has more microbes. It helps the food produce faster. And not only faster, but healthier, so we don't have to use the pesticides, etc. And what's happening to our soil is that without the organic waste, then it doesn't hold water. So as we go through this row crop, we're using more and more water. And of course, water is a precious commodity. And so as we add more organic waste, we get to use less and less water. It's pretty fascinating how the system works. More crap and more water? No, more crap, less water. Anyway, the whole point is like There is nothing waste. What we eat, we consume, we eliminate. It goes back to produce the next crop of food that we will consume. Anyway, I am going to introduce my props in place of my special guest. Susan Springfield used to have a lot of props. This is the mushroom, the fungi, okay? And so I'm going to put fungi right here and tell you a story. And Mr. Lemon, or binary lemon, I'm sorry. Anyway, so when I was teaching school a few years ago, and it was my first sermon, I talked about how I took my students to a Monterey mushroom farm in Morgan Hill. And we went to learn about composting. And composting smells really atrocious. And so my 30 students were going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. They were having a really hard time with it. But as we went in there, it was in this huge building where they have layers of mushrooms. And the Cesar Chavez farm workers go in with their fingers, and they put their fingers in the mushrooms, and then they cut and drop, and then put their fingers in, cut and drop. And there's 3 levels. And the gentleman that was giving us a tour said that the compost, this was the year of 2000, and that was 22 years ago, and the compost at that time cost $35,000 for a large, about the size of half the room, of manure and microbes. And now, about 2 years ago, that same compost was $65,000. Do you want to know what it is today? Over $100,000 for a pile of poop. That's really interesting, isn't it? Anyway, so the mushroom. I want to read something to you, what they're discovering in the research. The research suggests fungi operate as individuals. They engage in decision-making. They are capable of learning and possessing short-term memory. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? And this is what I want to tell you. I have 2 superheroes today. One is the superworm, and they couldn't be here today because Elijah set them free about a year ago in our backyard. I brought them, I bought them at PetSmart, and I brought them, and he released them to their freedom. So they're not here today. And the mushrooms that I brought, they became my fingernails and my toenails. I ate them for dinner, so they're no longer here. I have a poor replica of a fake mushroom here. But what is so amazing, that the more we understand ourselves and the universe and really look deeply into nature, they have consciousness. And we eat them, and we become a part of them. They become a part of us. That everything we eat turns into us and all of their intelligence. Because within the seed of this lemon as an acorn is the whole imprint of a whole lemon tree, a whole acorn tree, just like us. And this is what we get to express within ourselves, is the energy from this lemon. I think that's fascinating, and we don't take a lot of time to understand that. So why is the mushroom my superhero right now, and the superworm? Well, let me tell you. So, in the depths of the darkest corner of Earth in Pakistan, I think it's the darkest, I'm imagining it's pretty dark, there's no sunlight. It's on the bottom of the compost heap that we throw away all our trash to a country like Pakistan. So it piles up there, not here, so we don't have to see it. There's a little fungi. And it had no food. It had no light. It had nothing. And you know the story of mushrooms, right? I grew up next to a mushroom farm. And the joke was the farmers never, ever put the mushrooms outside. They were always in a building. And they never used lights. So the mushrooms were always in the dark. And one of the reasons they were in buildings is because the sperms are so potent that if you're growing a white button mushroom, and if you're not at least 10 miles away from where they're doing portobello mushrooms, those sperms will fly 10 miles and find the button mushrooms and kill them. So they have to be protected in buildings, right? So this little fungi is in Pakistan and checking everything out, becoming more of who it is, and it realizes that it has nothing to eat. So it starts consuming plastic water bottles. Yes, plastic water bottles. There is a fungi that can consume large quantities when it has some friends around of water bottles. In fact, one of Elijah's friends owns about, I don't know how many acres, I think he said about 20 to 40 acres in Oregon, and they have started a water bottle, operation, recycling, using the fungi, and the fungi is reproduced at San Francisco State in their biology labs. They assist them in creating more of them. And the fungi has evolved to eat our plastic water bottles. If that's not a superhero, I don't know what is, right? I mean, don't you think that's pretty amazing? The intelligence of a mushroom, of a fungi, which they say have all these properties, figured out we weren't getting rid of our plastic water bottles very quickly, and it started eating them. That's pretty amazing. Makes our efforts look pretty tacky, in my opinion. So I want to honor the fungi. So many properties. They're making houses in different continents with certain types of mushroom. And the bricks that they make, the mushrooms that they make the bricks out of to build the homes are eventually biodegradable, but there's no waste. If something happens to the home, it goes back to the earth. So it's just really revealing itself to be so magical, as mushrooms have always been kind of our magical friend, and there's psychedelic mushrooms too that have also been our friends when we were in college. Opened our minds to see things differently. So I just wanted to honor the mushroom because I really feel like in this time when we really need to pay attention to how we're farming, how we're doing our soil so that we have enough food to eat in 13 years. And I am blessing everyone here that we'll all be here in 13 years. That's 2035, okay? That's only 13 years away to be in the 2030s. Anyway, so I just want to acknowledge and I want you to give it up in consciousness for the fungi, for the mushroom. Yay! Woo! So we're taking this really serious subject and going into story, because that's a great place to be. So anyway, the next thing I want to share is about the superworm. And this incredible worm is fed to a lot of geckos in a lot of households across the United States. There's the regular, what's the worm called? Not the superworm, mealworm, that's what it's called, sorry. It's because it's a meal. But anyway, they give it to all the snakes and geckos that need food. And you buy them at Petco. And I bought 12 because you couldn't buy one. They came in a little cup. And these worms they're a particular mealworm that is called a superworm, okay? And again, this is all about soil, about a planet. And the superworm superpower is this. It got hungry, and it decided to eat styrofoam. Now, the most magical part of this superworm is this. It processes the petroleum out of the styrofoam as it eats it, and then eliminates non-toxic biodegradable waste for the garden. We haven't been able to, they say it takes over 50 to 75 years to get rid of a piece of styrofoam, if we're lucky. And we don't see all this, but it's building up. Can you imagine 2 more billion people on the planet? There's a lot to be taken care of. But this superworm eats styrofoam. So I got the worms, I put some styrofoam in, I took it to my classrooms. I have about, with all the kids in all the different classrooms, I think, 80, 40, about 120 students. And I brought those worms everywhere I went for a couple months. And then I gave them to Elijah so he could set them free. Anyway, but what happens to these wonderful little beetles, it's really amazing, worms, is after they eat the styrofoam, and they eat a pretty good chunk in a nice amount of time, not too long. That is their first phase. Like almost every worm, they then turn into something else, like caterpillars turn into, butterflies. They turn into beetles. That's why I keep saying beetles. They turn into beetles. After about a year of growing up, these superworms turn into beetles. And the kind of beetles they are dung beetles. Do you know? They eat poop. And they roll that poop along until they get a pile of poop and help the flowers and the food grow. So these guys said, hey, these humans aren't doing anything about this styrofoam over here. Let's get rid of it, right? The miracle and magic of nature that these super worms and super fungi are trying to clean up the earth. So the power in them and the intelligence in them is amazing. And we take for granted so many things and not stop to really dive deeply into what's right in front of us. So I want to give it up also for the superworm/beetle. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Yay! So I have 5 minutes, and I'm going to try to get through this. So today is to remember that there is no away in waste. Everything has to happen in a transformational cycle, or we get stuck in scarcity, and we get in trouble. And so what I want to say to you is that is the same thing when we talk about how we wasted things in our life. Wasted time, wasted energy, wasted our life in a relationship that didn't work out, in a job that didn't work out to what we wanted. There is no waste. We have the opportunity in each moment to transform that with our awareness. And one of the things I really, really realize is in this moment, as you are here in that chair, as I am standing here, what comes out of my mouth, what I'm feeling, of course, is an inside job, and whatever I'm thinking, whatever I'm feeling, creates me in my next moment of becoming who I want. Nothing happens to you from out there. Nothing. Even though it may look like it. The only thing that can happen is within us, our own personal experience and how we give meaning to things. That is our choice. Things can happen left and right, but we're waiting for something outside of us to happen to us, right? When my ship comes in. No. It's about what's going on inside within us. That is where we experience life. We don't experience life out here. Does anybody experience life out here? You experience from where? Here, right? We experience from within ourselves. So, isn't that amazing that we have that power to do that? That no matter what it is, we give it meaning, and we're the only ones that give it meaning, and we're the only ones who experience our own life. as Mavis experiences her life and I experience my life, and no one else can do that for us. So I was listening to Wayne Dyer. I had a situation a couple days ago, and real quick, Wayne Dyer says, how do you react when you're squeezed? What comes out of you when you're stressed? When you squeeze a lemon, you know you're going to get lemon juice, right? When people squeeze you, what comes out? When you're under stress, what comes out? When you're stressed, does your patience and your grace come out like it can at church when we're all hugging each other? When you're confronted with a huge obstacle in life, does the juices of love come flowing from you? Or is it things that aren't as sweet, maybe very salty? And that is why this spiritual practice is so much more important than your belief system. Your practice in the moment, in the present moment, in the now. People talk about that all the time. In the now, in the present moment. That's where we get to choose what we want to experience. We have so many healers here. We have psychotherapists, we have massage therapists in this community. We have people who do hypnotherapy. We have all these amazing, magical, mystical people who do all these wonderful things. And it's about the ability we have in this present moment, to reframe how we want to see the world. That's what affirmations are. That's what visioning is to reframe the world so we can experience more of the magic, more of the mystery, and unfold and reveal more of who we are. And we do that by being aware in the moment. So real quickly, I want to offer and invite you to do this. 2 days ago, I went to take my dog to the groomers. And I noticed 2 days prior, my neighbor said, "Hey, looks like you're losing oil." I was like, "Oh, I'll check it out." So the next day, there's some oil. And then when I went to the dog groomers, it was like, whoosh, all the oil gone, right? So I asked the lady, is there a garage nearby? She said, sure. So I went to the closest garage. And they said, oh, it's going to be $160, and we're going to look at the car. I was like, okay, you can't drive it. You're going to have to get a tow truck. So I'm kind of feeling stuck. So I go straight into prayer. Things break. It's the nature of the universe. Either we fix them, we repair them, or we go on to something else. So I said, okay. So he gets in there, and he goes, whoever changed your oil, took a screwdriver and tried to get the cap off because it was too hard and actually punctured the canister, which holds the filter. And he goes, it'll take about 3 or 4 days and about $1,300. And I'm like, oh, breathe. And so I'm breathing. And then I sit down and I'm breathing and I'm being really calm. I slowed my speech down because my blood pressure was going higher, and I slowed my speech down. I went into prayer, and I just sat with it, knowing it was going to be okay. A little while later, he comes out, and he said, I'm not going to charge you. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm awake now. And oh, okay. He said, you need to take it to the place where you last got your oil changed and demand that they fix it. I was like, oh, confrontation. Okay. And then he goes back. And then I go back into meditation. And I call him up, and it was kind of, got to tow it over there. The gentleman comes back out. He says, his name was Big Jim, okay? And here is the miracles of being present in the moment and not going crazy in your mind of being a victim or why me, all that kind of stuff. Big Jim comes out, and he goes, I know, I can see that you're stressed. And I want to tell you that I just quit that particular garage that I was working for 5 years and came here 3 weeks ago. I know the manager. And he goes, I would never take my car there again if I were you. I was like, okay. He goes, but I have a gift for you. And I was like, okay. He goes, here's the district manager for that company. It's a personal phone number. If you don't get what you want, You get to call her. And he goes, if he's giving you a hard time, just drop her name. I was like, whoa, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for my life, So I knew that each journey that I took was about my spiritual journey of how you handle any problem, how you handle any situation, an argument, whatever, an illness. It's about understanding to live in the present moment as much as you can. Because there is magic and miracles, just like in the fungi and in the superworm. So I get there. I never raised my voice. I got it. He said, he'll fix it. And an hour later, he goes, oh, we just put a new cap on. It's all good. But I had the picture from the other guy of the damage that the screwdriver had done. So anyway, long story, I went and I calmly told him that wasn't sufficient, and I knew that I didn't want to call his district manager. And so he goes, okay, I'm not going to take responsibility for it, but I'll fix it. I was like, okay. And I said, okay, next week. He goes, you won't have any problem with oil. I did. But anyway, the point is there's magic. There is magic in each moment. Remember that song? This magic moment. Then it goes kind of sexual. But anyway. When your lips are close to mine. Each moment, we are blessed with an understanding and an infinite number of possibilities to reframe our emotions that don't serve us, our thoughts that don't serve us. And that is the gift for you today, that as you sit or as you stand in this moment, in the power of the now, that you get to choose what's going on with me. How am I experiencing this? How do I want to shift this? How do I want to experience this? Because our brain can take us into lots of stories. So that is my story for the week, but it's more importantly the gift of being in the now and not to waste anything in our experience, but transform it to tell the story of what we want to be, what we want to become in our next moment. Namaste. And let us go into prayer right now. I know that there is one power and one presence that moves and has its being in each and every one of us. This power and this presence is divine. It is infinite. It is the stuff that everything is made of. From our material paradigm of our five senses to our spiritual paradigm, which can transform our experiences, our feelings, into a place of understanding our suffering, of understanding our pain, and using that to create more compassion, more spiritual depth, that we can navigate our world with more love and more peace. And with our heart and our words in alignment with this power within us, that we are directing in this present moment, that we are master of our own feelings, of our own emotions, and we can transform them into the beauty through the tragedy and the manure in our life. We can grow the things we want to give meaning to and experience. What a blessing it is to be alive and to be breathing and to have our feet planted on this earth, to grow, to be more responsible in our waste, because nothing is ever wasted, for it only can be transformed. And with this knowledge, I release this and know that your day and your week will be blessed with miracles and magic. And so it is.